She mopped their floors for 15 years, then walked into the boardroom and fired the CEO. They called her Miss Denise. Not Denise Jenkins, not Denise from accounting, not Mrs. Jenkins like she preferred, just Miss Denise, the janitor. Every morning at 5:45, long before the office lights clicked on and the sales team started bragging about who closed what, she was already there, pushing a squeaky cart past the frosted glass doors of Crestwell Holdings. Her gray uniform had faded over the years, and her sneakers had flattened out from walking the length of that building so many times. She kept a rag tucked in her pocket, a quiet look on her face, and a rhythm in her step like she'd been doing this forever. And in a way, she had. 15 years. 15 years of collecting crumpled napkins from conference rooms, picking up gum wrappers from the break room floor, and wiping fingerprints off the elevator buttons that no one ever seemed to clean. To most of the folks who worked there, she blended into the background like wallpaper. If she was in the room, they talked around her, through her, like she was invisible. Except for a few decent ones, mostly interns or temps who hadn't learned yet that pretending not to see her was part of the job culture. But Denise wasn't bitter. At least, not at first. She kept her head down, kept her mouth shut, and listened. Listened to the laughter from corner offices. Listened to the conversations that people thought weren't worth whispering. The jokes, the arrogance, the lies. She learned everything she needed just from a mop and a good pair of ears. One time, a marketing rep left a full sandwich on the trash can instead of inside it. Denise picked it up, tossed it without a word. He walked by, didn't even say thank you, just looked at her and said, "Make sure the carpet's dry before the 3 o'clock meeting." She smiled and nodded. The next day, he spilled coffee on that same carpet and blamed her for not cleaning it well enough. She nodded again. It wasn't the first time, wouldn't be the last. Down on the 4th floor, one of the senior VPs, Douglas Fairbanks, loud and always reeking of cologne, once laughed with his assistant saying, "Can you imagine working here all your life and not even having a desk?" She heard him. He didn't care. He didn't know who she was. None of them did. That building was full of people who thought their title gave them value, who thought respect had to be earned with quarterly goals and 10 a.m. meetings that should have been emails. They didn't know that Denise didn't need their validation, because Denise owned more of that company than anyone in that building. But she hadn't told a soul, not yet. And as she pushed her cart past the executive offices that morning, pausing to wipe down a glass wall where someone's fingerprint smudged the company logo, her phone buzzed quietly in her pocket. One message, just a single sentence. "We're ready when you are." She put the phone back in her pocket, her expression unreadable. Then she kept walking. But this time, she wasn't just cleaning floors. She was walking towards something, and nobody saw it coming. Before Denise ever held a mop in that building, she sat at a kitchen table in Columbus, Georgia, poring over business plans with her husband, Roland Jenkins. That was back when Crestwell Holdings wasn't even a name yet. Just an idea scribbled on the back of a grocery receipt. Roland had drive. That kind of raw ambition you couldn't teach. He'd grown up working his uncle's delivery trucks, running routes through Alabama and South Carolina. He knew logistics inside and out before it was ever called a supply chain. Denise, on the other hand, was the brains behind the scenes. She didn't talk much in public, but she had a sharp way of looking at problems, quietly breaking things down and finding what didn't fit. In 1998, Roland and a friend named Curtis Banning scraped together enough to start a freight brokerage with just one rented office space, 2 flip phones, and a fax machine that barely worked. Denise was the first to invest. Her father had left her a small inheritance when he passed, a life insurance payout most folks would have used for a down payment on a house. But Denise had a different idea. "Put it in your name," she told Roland one night. "I'll stay in the background. Nobody needs to know." He looked at her across the table and said, "You sure?" "I know what I'm doing," she said, "and I trust you." Over the next 6 years, the company exploded. Curtis handled networking, Roland took care of operations, and Denise watched every dollar. She did the books, filed paperwork, helped write contracts under a different LLC she registered just in case. It was her way of protecting them both. But Roland, he didn't protect himself. In 2004, a wreck on I-185 took him too soon. A late-night delivery run, a tired driver, a flipped trailer, gone in seconds. Curtis gave a weak speech at the funeral, all business, barely mentioned Denise. That was the first sign. The second came weeks later, when Curtis filed documents removing Roland's name and quietly pushed Denise out of all internal communications. He assumed she'd disappear. But Denise had receipts, legal ones, signed documents from the very beginning that gave her equal ownership of Roland's share. And more than that, she had leverage. She could have sued, could have walked into that office with lawyers and demanded control right then and there. But instead, she waited. Because Denise knew the difference between power and timing. She said nothing. No press. No letters. Just silence. Then, in 2007, a job opening showed up on a community board in Macon for night janitorial staff. Crestwell Logistics. She circled it. 2 days later, she walked in with a fake resume, a borrowed address, and a fresh pair of work shoes. She got the job on the spot. Curtis never recognized her, not once. And by that time, he wasn't even the one running the place anymore. A new name was floating around. Thomas Wexler, young MBA from Florida State. Didn't know a thing about how the company was built, but knew how to dress like a CEO. Denise kept her head down, kept showing up. One night at a time, one floor at a time, 15 years. Every trash can she emptied, every bathroom she scrubbed. It wasn't just cleaning, it was surveillance. She listened, watched, waited, and kept every single receipt. But eventually, what you bury comes to the surface. And Denise was almost done digging. By year 10, Denise knew every square inch of Crestwell's headquarters in Birmingham, Alabama. She knew which hallway had the loose floorboard, which microwave sparked when you closed it too hard, and which of the directors routinely used company cards for personal dinners. She didn't need to guess anymore. She knew exactly what was happening. Crestwell had gone from a tight-knit logistics company to a cold, bloated operation where upper management sat behind glass walls, throwing out jargon while frontline workers were barely hanging on. She'd watch warehouse drivers come in with backs aching, carrying overtime slips that never seemed to get approved. She'd hear the HR ladies whisper about cutting corners on health benefits. And more than once, she saw mid-level managers getting escorted out, fired without notice, because they'd violated protocol. One of them, a man named Terrence Doyle, made the mistake of speaking up in a staff meeting about salary disparities. He was gone within a week. Denise was invisible in those rooms. No one filtered what they said around her. At first, she just listened, but then she started writing things down. She kept a little black notebook inside her locker, tucked behind a plastic bag of backup gloves. It was filled with names, dates, quotes, who said what, when they said it, and who was in the room. If you flipped through the pages, you'd find entries like, Feb 14. We can cut the bonus pool for lower staff. They'll take what we give them. Wexler to CFO, room 508. June 3rd, warehouse safety violation ignored. Man slipped, no paperwork filed. Brenda saw it. Aug 19. Heard Wexler say, let the janitor clean it up. That's what she's paid for. I was standing right there. It wasn't bitterness fueling her. It was clarity. She saw a company drowning in arrogance. One night, around 11:45, Denise paused her cart outside the 6th floor executive suite. The hallway was dark, except for the light coming from the main conference room. She heard laughter inside. Wexler's voice carried, so I told him, if he doesn't like his pay, he can clock out and try his luck driving DoorDash. I've got 20 more resumes waiting. Laughter followed. Then one of the VPs, Meredith Chandler, added, half these folks should be grateful we even let them in the building. They all laughed again. Denise stood there unseen. After a moment, she walked away, not with anger, but with confirmation. The more she saw, the more she understood. This place wasn't just broken. It was rotten. And they weren't going to change just because someone asked nicely. They needed to be replaced. She started planning, quietly, piece by piece. She met with her attorney in the back room of a diner off US Highway 280. A man named Elliot Miles, discreet and direct. She handed him a flash drive. Inside were years of notes, photos, recorded conversations, everything she'd documented since day one. Elliot didn't say a word for a long time after going through it. Then he looked at her and said, you know, once you do this, it's going to shake that whole building. Denise nodded. It's already shaking. They just don't know it yet. He smiled. I'll start drafting paperwork. The plan was simple. Let them walk straight into their own trap. Let them keep thinking she was just a cleaning lady. Let them underestimate her one more time. She wanted them confident, comfortable, because the fall always hits harder when you never saw the ledge. But sometimes, even the most patient fire needs just one spark, and that spark was about to happen on a regular Tuesday afternoon. It started with a paper plate. Denise had just finished cleaning the third-floor break room, wiping down the counters, taking out the trash, refilling the cheap powdered creamer they called premium. She was walking past the long conference hallway when she saw it. A half-eaten slice of birthday cake sitting dead in the center of the hallway floor, fork sticking out of it, chocolate smeared on the carpet. Someone had just left it there, not even on a table, just dropped it. She bent down slowly, not because it was difficult, but because something about that plate felt deliberate, like someone did it just to see what she'd do. As she picked it up, she heard the voice. "You missed a spot." It was Wexler, standing at the end of the hallway, hands in his pockets, smirking like a man with nothing to fear. She turned her head just slightly. "Excuse me?" He walked toward her, slowly. "Right there," he said, pointing to the floor next to where she'd just cleaned. "We're about to have a client presentation in here. Think you can give the floor another pass before they come in?" There was no spot, not even a scuff. Denise stood up, cake plate in one hand, mop handle in the other. She didn't say anything. Wexler stared at her, then chuckled like she was part of some inside joke. "I swear, sometimes I think you people just pretend to clean so you can stay on the clock." Her eyes narrowed, just for a second. "What people is that?" she asked. He paused. "Oh, come on," he said, half laughing. "Don't be so sensitive. I'm just saying, if I paid you a little more, maybe you'd find the spots before I did." She blinked once, no expression, then she nodded. "I'll make sure it's spotless," she said. Wexler clapped his hands once. "That's what I like to hear." He walked off, proud of himself. Thought he'd put her in her place. He had no idea. That night, Denise didn't go straight home. She went to the Crestwell Records room, an area she had quiet access to after hours, thanks to a badge she borrowed from a manager who'd once left it on a sink. She'd kept it for months, just in case. She moved quickly, pulled files, took photos, emails, budget reports, and most importantly, she printed a bonus report from that same quarter. It showed Wexler had given himself a $55,000 performance bonus for operational excellence. Meanwhile, he'd cut employee meal stipends, reduced driver overtime rates, and froze raises for custodial and warehouse staff. The final straw came the next morning. One of the janitors, Cynthia, came into the locker room crying. Her teenage son had been in a car accident, and she'd asked for a day off to visit the hospital. Her request was denied. Denied. Not enough coverage, they said. Denise sat there, listening. Cynthia couldn't even finish a sentence through the tears. No one from the executive office cared. She was just a name on the schedule. Denise didn't say anything, but she stood up, pulled her phone from her bag, and stepped outside. She called Elliot. "It's time," she said. "You sure?" "I'm sure." "All right," he replied. "It's going to be messy." "I've been cleaning up messes my whole life," she said. "Let's go." Over the next 48 hours, Denise set the wheels in motion. She gave her lawyer the final receipts, made arrangements for a closed-door shareholder meeting, scheduled an emergency review under her legal rights as majority holder. The funny thing was, none of them noticed. Not even when she came in the next day wearing a new coat, a pressed blouse, and shoes that hadn't touched a mop in months. She walked past the front desk, didn't even glance at her old cart. She took the elevator to the 8th floor, straight to the boardroom. But what she had to say wouldn't just change her life. It would shatter everything they thought they knew about power. The boardroom at Crestwell Holdings had 12 leather chairs, one ridiculous chandelier, and a $14,000 custom table flown in from Seattle. Wexler once bragged about it being real walnut, like that was supposed to mean something to the janitors who cleaned gum from under it. At 10 o'clock a.m. sharp, the quarterly review began. Wexler stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, tie loose, like he owned the oxygen in the room. To his left sat Meredith Chandler, his second in command. Next to her, Curtis Banning, the only man in the room who should have known what was coming, except he didn't. Denise walked in 5 minutes later, silent as a held breath, no mop, no gloves, just a navy blue blazer and a folder in her hand. Wexler frowned. "I'm sorry, we're in a meeting. Maintenance is supposed to come through after hours." She didn't blink. "I'm not here for maintenance." The room shifted. Meredith squinted at her. I'm sorry, do you have an appointment? I do, Denise said, walking slowly to the far end of the table. And I believe the shareholders were properly notified. That's when Elliot walked in behind her, briefcase in hand, calm as ever. Good morning, he said. My name is Elliot Miles, legal counsel for Mrs. Denise Jenkins, majority shareholder of Crestwell Holdings. Silence. Wexler's mouth opened, but no words came out. Denise laid the folder down on the table and flipped it open. Inside were signed partnership agreements from 1998, updated ownership documents, and a notarized letter transferring full voting rights to her upon Roland Jenkins's death. Curtis shifted in his seat like someone had pulled the rug out from under his feet. No, he muttered. That can't be right. Denise turned to him. You remember the contracts, Curtis. You helped write them. He didn't speak. She stepped forward, her voice calm and low. For 15 years, I watched this place become unrecognizable. Watched you pad your bonuses, ignore safety violations, and punish employees for asking for basic decency. She looked straight at Wexler. And I watched you turn my husband's company into a playground for your ego. Wexler tried to laugh it off. This is a misunderstanding. I don't know what kind of scam this is. It's not a scam, Elliot interrupted. All documents have been verified, and as of this moment, Mrs. Jenkins has called for a vote of no confidence in the current CEO. She has the authority to do so under the original shareholder agreement. Wexler stood up, both hands on the table. You don't know what you're doing. Denise walked around the table slowly, looking each person in the eye. 15 years, she said. You all looked past me like I wasn't even there. You let people suffer. You let this company rot. I gave you every chance to show some humanity. She paused at Wexler's chair. And you failed. He turned red. You think you can just walk in here and take over? She leaned in. I am the company. Elliot placed a small stack of letters in front of each board member. Effective immediately, Mr. Thomas Wexler's contract is terminated. Security has been notified. Wexler's voice cracked. You can't do this. Curtis muttered under his breath. She already did. Security entered seconds later. They didn't say a word, just waited. Wexler looked around the room for backup, found none. He grabbed his phone, his pride, and stormed out, followed closely by Meredith, who suddenly remembered she had another meeting. Once the room cleared, Denise turned back to the board. I'm not here to play boss, she said. I'm here to rebuild what this place used to stand for. One of the younger board members, Jonas Evers, barely 30, raised his hand. What exactly do you want to do first? Denise smiled. Start by listening to the people who've been ignored the longest. She closed the folder. Change starts today. But just because you take out the garbage doesn't mean the house is clean, and Denise knew the real work was only beginning. The following Monday morning, Denise parked in the executive lot for the first time. She didn't like it. Not because of the space. It was bigger, closer, covered from the rain. But something about that lot felt disconnected, like it had been reserved for people who didn't know what it meant to sweat. Still, she parked, walked in, head held high. She greeted the front desk receptionist by name. Good morning, Tasha. The young woman blinked. Miss Denise? It's just Denise now. She stepped into the elevator. No mop, no cleaning cart, just a notepad and a full calendar. By 9:30 a.m., she was in her office. New paint on the walls, same window view Wexler used to brag about. But she didn't spend much time looking out. Too much to do inside. First thing she did? Called a staff meeting. Not for the board, not for the executives, for the employees, drivers, admin staff, janitors, customer service reps, all invited. The room filled up quick. People looked confused, some suspicious. No one knew what to expect. Denise walked in, stood at the front. No microphone, just her voice. I want to start by saying thank you, she began. Most of you never knew who I was, and you didn't need to, because your work spoke louder than any title in this building. She paused. I'm here to change things, but not by myself. I've spent years listening to your frustrations, your fears, your ideas, quietly. Now, I want to hear them out loud. People started shifting in their chairs. It wasn't what they expected. A driver named Alonzo raised his hand. Does this mean we get overtime back? Yes, Denise said, And retro pay for the last 2 quarters. You'll see it on Friday's check. A woman from HR, Deborah, stood up. And the health coverage? It's been getting worse every year. We're already reviewing new providers, Denise said, and every employee will get a survey to weigh in. No more backroom decisions about your well-being. There were no applause breaks, no over-the-top reactions, just silence, and then murmurs. People turning to each other like they were slowly realizing she was serious. Someone asked, "What about the people Wexler let go without cause?" "We're reviewing those terminations," she answered. "If you were wrongfully dismissed, you'll be contacted. No guarantees, but you'll get your name cleared at the very least." Another voice from the back. "You're really the owner?" Denise smiled. "Always have been." She ended the meeting with a single promise. "If you speak, I will listen. And if you work, you'll be respected." After that, things didn't get easier. They got harder. The remaining executives didn't exactly welcome her with open arms. A few tried to block her decisions, arguing she didn't have the business background. One even questioned if she knew how to scale growth. Denise looked at him and said, "I scaled my grief into silence for 15 years. I think I can manage your spreadsheets." That shut him up. She brought in new department heads, promoted from within, people who had been overlooked for years. She changed vendor contracts, renegotiated warehouse leases, and brought back the annual Employee Appreciation Day that had mysteriously fallen out of budget years ago. She visited every single department, sat with them, ate lunch in the break room, listened. And slowly, the building began to feel different. Not softer, just realer. One night, Cynthia, the janitor who'd cried over her son's accident, left a note in Denise's office. It said, "I didn't think anybody like us could ever make it to a place like that. You proved me wrong." Denise kept that note in her top drawer, but even after all the changes, one question kept coming up in whispers, and Denise knew she'd have to answer it. Why did she wait so long? It was a question she heard over and over. "Why'd you wait, Denise?" Some asked it with curiosity, others with doubt. A few with quiet resentment, like maybe she'd let it go too long. But Denise never got defensive. She'd just sit back in her chair, lace her fingers, and say the same thing every time. Because power only matters when you know how to use it. See, Denise didn't wait out of fear. She waited because the company needed to show who they were, without her influence. She needed to see it with her own eyes, needed the rot to rise to the surface. Because if she had stepped in too early, they would have said she overreacted. They would have gaslighted her, spun it like she was making noise about nothing. But 15 years of silence? That made her undeniable. She saw everything. She let it play out. And when the time came, she didn't argue. She just showed them the truth, and they folded under the weight of their own decisions. The janitor had become the witness, and eventually the judge. One afternoon, she walked back into the same hallway where Wexler once pointed at the spot she missed. Same carpet, same light. Except now, it was spotless, and no one dared talk down to her. An intern passed her in the hallway, slowed down, and said nervously, "Hi, Mrs. Jenkins." She smiled. "Just Denise." That afternoon, she hosted a small gathering for the staff in the company courtyard. No speeches, no banners, just food trucks and folding chairs, and people laughing again. Alonzo, the driver, clinked his soda can against hers. "To the quiet ones," he said. Denise raised her can. "To the ones they never saw coming." The lesson? It wasn't just about her ownership. It was about how easily we judge people by their uniforms, how quick we are to talk over someone holding a mop, how fast we are to assume value is tied to job titles in corner offices. Denise wasn't the exception. She was the reminder. People aren't invisible just because you stop looking at them. And sometimes, the person sweeping the floor is the one who built the house. So if you work with someone you've never really talked to, maybe stop and say hello. You never know who's holding the keys to the whole building. If this story made you pause, even for a second, share it. Because somewhere right now, there's another Miss Denise, getting overlooked, getting talked down to, getting erased. And maybe, just maybe, she's watching. Let her know we see her now.